so, it brings me back to that first realization I had as a young person of not only the atrocities that happened, but really kind of turning a new leaf and realizing we have not only a right, but an obligation to protect ourselves.
I personally am not Jewish, but I think that International Holocaust Remembrance Day is extremely important because I think it is really important to support the Jewish community and what they've been through. And I think that in order to commemorate the day, I think it's really important to educate yourself and take an interest in reading about the history. SDC was actually able to bring in a Holocaust survivor to come speak to the Harker community, which further increases education and just awareness about the entire day.
The class is about the impact of the Holocaust and the things that happen on the individual. And each author uses the written word as the medium by which they explore their own understanding of what happened to them and how they're living with that. And they try to find a way to impart to the reader, us, what happens to a person when they experience an event that is so enormously horrific and complex. Over the years, the class has shifted a tiny bit to using the Holocaust as a vehicle for understanding what can happen to people in any time, in any country, in any culture, in any belief system, when one group oppresses and attempts to destroy another group, and what the effects of trauma are on the individual and also multi-generationally.
On the one hand, I'm a cisgendered white male. I have a lot of privilege that comes with that. On the other hand, I'm a Jew, a minority, less than 1% of the population, and we've been persecuted since really the beginning of religion. And so I, for one, have experienced anti-Semitism, but I haven't experienced it on the level of some of my ancestors, right? But I carry that burden that my ancestors had.
I think it's a reminder of what's possible. I think it's important for us to recognize that the people who perpetrated the Holocaust are regular people. That they are not demons and monsters devoid of humanity. That through the study of the Holocaust we can come to understand and should remind ourselves on a regular basis that we too are susceptible to a lot of the psychological things that could lead to such an event.
Reading is really important. There is Night, Dawn, and Day, which is a book, and then as well as Mouth, which is a graphic novel. You can even take the two electives on campus, Literature of the Holocaust with Mr. Perron and History of the Holocaust and Genocide, I believe, with Ms. Bianco. I think them as individuals are also great resources just at our Harker community. And then I would also say your peers. There's a large Jewish community here at Harker, so talking to them if you're interested in it. And then as well as, of course, so many online resources.
I think the most important thing to do with regard to remembering the Holocaust is to look at it in the wider context of anti-Semitism, both historic and today. So I think that the real legacy of the Holocaust is its place in global anti-Semitism, which is as alive today as it has ever been. And so I think the biggest mistake we can make, and the most important thing we can do, is not to place it in history, and to recognize that it is alive, it is existing today, and it can happen again.
For me, it's more than just anti-Semitism. I appreciate that it is a day that we're recognizing the history of anti-Semitism, particularly in Europe in the 1940s. But we still see immense amounts of hatred for groups of people. be it Jews or other groups around the world. And so I hope as we take this day to recognize a particular group of people, we are also using it to look around and see what similar atrocities are happening today. Because the atrocity of the Holocaust isn't just what happened, it's also that the rest of the world stood by for a long time, while millions of people were murdered before they stepped in. And so I think one of the lessons that we have to learn is not only specifically not allowing this to happen ever again to the Jewish people, but more pointedly looking at ourselves and saying, what are we doing today? What are we doing right now to help people who are being persecuted? Maybe not in the exact same way, but in other similar ways.